Well, good morning, Victory. Good morning. Man, most of you guys know I have a younger daughter, Harper, and throughout this season of life, what I have figured out is most wisdom that I've gathered over the last few years has come from Disney movies, right? Like it's just, you can't help it. We sort of assimilate, right, what we watch. And so I was thinking about it. I was thinking about, just the things from Disney movies that I've learned over the years that, what would be the wisdom that I would want my daughter to grab onto? Or if I was going to share the wisdom of Disney movies with my friends, like what would some of the things be that I've learned? And I think the first one, and maybe the most important one is, don't take fruit from strange people, right? That there's not one time in a Disney movie someone's like, here, have this thing, and it's ended great, all right? So maybe just don't take gifts from strangers, period, right? Like, I think that's fair. Number two, and this is a little of a weird one, and I don't really know like why this is, but if you want to become royalty, at least one, if not both of your parents has to die, right? That's just, it's true, right? Like, and I didn't really want Harper learning that, right? And like, it's unbelievable to me. Like, it just happens, and then they're fine, right? They're like, oh, my mom and dad died, but at least I have this crown, right? And like, everything's perfect, right? So I don't know. I don't know where to stick that one, but that's something that I've learned. Third thing I've learned from Disney movies is it is perfectly acceptable to break into song at any time. Yeah, some of you are in, right? And Harper's picked this up, right? She'll randomly be talking to us about stuff, and she'll, bring me some fruit, and I'll be like, what is going on? First of all, you're not a princess because I'm not dead. And secondly, get your own fruit, but not from a strange lady, right? And so, right, but what I've noticed too is in those songs, right, in those musical moments is when the plot moves, right? They get a whole lot in a little bit of time, right? That's sort of a lot of the conflict, right, happens in song. A lot of the storytelling happens in the moments. These sort of, a big moment is coming in a Disney movie because of the music that plays behind it. And whether it's going to be happy or it's going to be sad or one of the parents are going to die. Like, you just sort of, from that some plot point is going to be moved forward through the song, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw the latest Frozen movie, right? But literally the whole movie is in the song. Go back and listen. If you haven't listen to the song and then watch the movie. They're like, oh, we're going to go here and do that, and a horse is going to come. Like, it's unbelievable, right? The entire plot is moved forward in one song. And this actually connects to what we're going to be talking about through the Songs of Christmas, because the book of Luke has apparently studied Disney movies, right? And especially at the beginning, every time a song shows up, something important is happening. When we catch the songs that these people are apparently randomly singing in real life, just slinging it out there, right? Like something happens and Mary just starts to go. She starts to sing, and Joseph's like, what's happening? You've never done this before, and angels are singing, and prophets are singing, and priests are singing. It's just these random moments of song. But if we pay attention to the songs, we find the plot of the story. And so as we go through this series of Songs of Christmas, we're going to see these moments where songs pop up, especially in the book of Luke, that propel the story of Israel and the story of Jesus forward. So we're going to start with this song here. I'm not going to sing it, and you are thankful for that. I'm just going to read it to you. So if you have your Bibles, turn to the book of Luke, chapter 1. I think 67 is where I'm going to start reading, maybe 68. And if you have your bulletins, you can open that. There should be a piece of paper in there that has it on there. If you're online with us today, thank you so much for being here. I know it's snowy outside, and so many people popped up and hey, couldn't make it, but we're watching online. Thank you for watching, for engaging. You can click on the link. It'll show you kind of where it is. It's going to be on the screen as well. So if you have none of those three things, if you don't have a phone, you don't have a Bible, you don't have a bulletin, you can look on the screen. And I'm going to read this passage first, and then I'm going to give you some context to explain what is happening here and why this random guy is singing. This is what it says. You may have to click it because my clicker is blinking at me. Hold on. There we go. Thank you. I just won't touch it anymore. I was messing him up. Praise be to the Lord God, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets long ago. Salvation from our enemies and from all the hands of those who hate us, to show mercy to our ancestors and remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to our father Abraham to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear in holiness and righteousness before him all of our days. All right, so what's going on? Well, we have Zechariah, who is a priest, and he and his wife Elizabeth have no children. Now, what's interesting about that is we're told that they are godly people. They are people who follow after the will of God. They follow the commandments. They do what they're supposed to do. And in that culture, children were sort of seen as this ultimate reward, right? If you have a bunch of children, you may disagree, right? But they're seen as this ultimate reward for being good. And so there's this sort of this dichotomy, right? There's these two things that are sort of going up against each other, this paradox, if you will. They're good, godly people. They believe God. They believe in his promises. They believe that he is who he says he is and he will do what he says he will do. But their belief is not matching up with the reality of their circumstances. And I think most of us have experienced this at some time. If you're a Christian especially, we sing songs about God and we read about God and we talk about God. But there are moments when the expectation that we have because of that belief does not match up with the reality that we're experiencing. And so they are childless. And there is a shame and a guilt that comes with that during that culture that was unhelpful and unnecessary, but it was there nonetheless. How good could you actually be if God isn't blessing you with children? And so there's a bit of this story, the narrative that starts where they feel lost. They feel forgotten. They feel that their cries perhaps aren't being heard. And it's a microcosm or a mirror of what's going on with Israel. The children of Israel have been waiting for God to show up for quite some time now. They've been waiting for God to come and rescue them from their oppressors, from their enemies, from those who hate them. They're asking God to do something, and they've been crying out to God. And it seems like the more they cry out, the further into the persecution and the oppression they get. And they don't feel heard. And there's a pain that comes with that. Sometimes there's an anger that comes with that. And they're sort of calling out to God, where are you at? Why aren't you here? What happened to the connection that we had before? And we sort of see this throughout the Old Testament and the First Testament that we read and moving into the New or the Second Testament of that there's this sense of forgottenness or lostness for the people. Sure, God has shown up in a few times, but he hasn't done what he said that he would do. These promises that he gave us, they haven't shown up yet. And they've lost this connection with God. And they just want to be known that they haven't been forgotten, that he's still there, that he's still listening. I did a church camp a while back. I used to go and speak at church camps a lot when I was like young and had energy. Now I'm old. I still have some energy, but I would just love it. I love doing it. And we went to this one, and it was out in the sticks, right? Like go to nowhere, turn left, and go 30 minutes, right? It was in this sort of valley, and we don't have mountains in Ohio per se, right? So it's sort of these hills that were going up, and it was sort of the side, and it was kind of carved out, and there was nowhere. And these teens are coming off the bus, and you could see in their face something was wrong. And what was wrong was in this particular valley, there was 0 cell phone reception. And they're freaking out. Right? They're like, Pastor Aaron, my phone isn't working, right? And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work down here. And they're like starting to shake, right? You got any extra phones, right? Is there something we can use? Is there internet? And I'm like, well, no, not really. And they're like, right? And if you know anyone like under the age of like 40, right? Like their phones are very important, right? It's just true. Like they actually did a thing for millennials, and they asked them like what their stress levels were, and there's a stress test thing you can see, like your mental and emotional stress of like, losing a job or losing a spouse, right? So they had all these things. So like for millennials, like losing their parents was like a 99, and then it was like losing a job, and then it was like cell phone dying when you're out. Right? Like that's true. You can look it up. Like it was crazy. It was like a 97. Like that, and these kids are freaking out, right? Because they're just like, well, how are they going to know I'm okay? And how do I talk to my girlfriend? And I'm like, bro, it's a week. You're going to be fine. And they are not believing me. And so they finally, there was one hill at this camp that somehow cell phone for connection like snuck through the force field, right? Like it somehow got down in, and what they would do is they would go and they would do what we all do, right? We've all done this when like you can't get your cell phone to work and you like Lion King it, right? You like hold it up. It's like, you're just waiting, right? And suddenly it would hit, and what they would do is they would call, but they would do it on speakerphone, right? Because they couldn't bring the phone. And so you had 100 teens out on this hill holding their phone with a speakerphone, being like, are you alive? Is everything okay, right? And my friend actually had a cabin like on that hill, and he was like, dude, I heard conversations that I never should have heard. He's like, it was like they're all like talking to their girlfriend, like, I miss you so much, like, don't forget me. And their girlfriend's like, it's been 3 hours, like, we're okay, But when you feel separated, when you feel unheard or you feel forgotten, that short amount of time can feel like an eternity. And when you're in pain, when you're hurting and you're waiting on God and it feels like he's silent, that's hard. Maybe you've experienced those moments where God just feels very quiet, where his presence doesn't feel as close, where your prayers sort of feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. And this is where the children of Israel find themselves. And for our story, in this passage, this is where this couple finds themselves. And so Zechariah, he's in the temple, he's a priest, he's doing his things. And an angel shows up. And an angel tells him, listen, you're going to have a baby. It's going to be okay. Now, what happens next amuses me greatly, right? I'm a geek. I look at things in the Bible and find them, and you may not find it as funny as I do, okay? But like I read through this passage, and I can't help but giggle because like Zechariah, an angel has shown up, right? Like that doesn't happen all that often, right? How many? No, I don't want to know. No, because that could get weird, right? Then we start judging each other, and so I'll just say it doesn't happen often that angels show up. Is that a fair assessment, right? And if they have for you, awesome. But not so much for me. And I would say the majority of us, like if a majority of us in here had seen angels, I would start to wonder about the water and painted post, right? Like it doesn't happen that much, right? So an angel shows up, which is kind of a big deal, I think. An angel shows up and brings a message to him directly from God, okay? So imagine for a moment, you're in a room, an angel comes out of nowhere, right? Flies through the wall, shows up and says, I have a message from God. And then he tells you that everything that you've wanted, this thing that you've hoped for and prayed for is going to happen. And you know what his response is? Could you give me some sort of sign? Bro, you're telling me like the angel wasn't enough? Like I've never gotten an angel. I want an angel, why not me? No, he shows up to you. He shows up and says, this kid's gonna happen in the name of John, and he gives this whole prophecy. And Zechariah's like, I'm not sure. Like, you got anything else? Like, I don't know. Did he want fire, right? Did he want, like, I don't know, the walls to catch on? Maybe he wanted God to do, like, some skywriting. And I don't know what it is that he wanted. But an angel flying in the room wasn't enough. And so you know what happens? The angel says, awesome. You're not going to be allowed to talk again until the baby is born. Here's your sign. Side note, subtext, if you will, this is the TV bonus, it's not on the test. Be careful what you ask for, because you could get it. And it may not be what you wanted in the begin with. But he missed it. And folks, the fact of the matter is there are God moments happening all around us all the time that we miss. We're not forgotten. We're not alone. We just don't see it. We miss. We miss that God is sending us these little love letters every day, letting us know that we're seen, that we're heard, that we're valued. It may not be as big as an angel flying into the room, but sometimes I wonder, even if it was, would it not be enough? Because sometimes our tears are too strong to see it, and our cries are too loud to hear it, and we miss that God has been constantly trying to give us the message that he sees us, that he loves us. He wants to bring us hope in the midst of what seems like hopeless situations. And he shows up to this guy, and he's an angel, and he says, look, you're going to have a son, and you're going to name him John, and he gives him all this stuff, and now he can't talk. So now we've got 9 months of no talking. And he comes back and he talks to his wife. Can you imagine that conversation, right? Hey, why can't you talk? We're going to have a kid. You know, why can't you talk? I didn't believe the angel. Like, I don't think that conversation went well. Like, I don't know how many times you've come home and told your wife you didn't believe the angel, but I just get the sense that she's like, you're an idiot. What happened? You know, and he can't say anything. So, you know, she goes on her day. This is the best 9 months of marriage they've had, right? Like, she's ecstatic. Like, she's like, yeah, don't believe any angel, right? And so they go through the process, and eventually the child is born. And they wait to name the child, which is odd. That's actually not a normal thing to do for the Jewish culture. Generally, as the Jewish culture, the Hebrews, they would name their child immediately upon birth, right? Which is what most of us do. And, you know, that's what we did, which it almost went poorly because we had kind of picked 3 names. It's a long story. We had a name picked. Cher didn't like it about halfway through. So I'm not bitter. It was a great name, though. I'll tell you later if you want to use it. And so I love you, baby doll. All right. And so Cher, you know, if you know our birth story, you know it wasn't a great one. And so after everything, Cher's high from all the meds that they're throwing at her, and I'm holding our child, and I look down at her, and I'm like, I think her name's Harper, you know? And the nurses are in slow motion are like, no! Like they're like afraid Cher's gonna come up with like some goofy name. And so they're like, she can't, and she's like, it is Harper, and she's crying. I'm like, it's fine. I've got this under control, right? So I don't know if that was what was happening here. But they wait 8 days. And actually in Roman culture, it was not uncommon to wait a week or maybe 2 before you named your child. It wasn't uncommon at all. And possibly, see, Luke in this gospel is writing to the Gentiles. He's not writing to a Jewish audience. He's writing to Romans. He's writing to Greek culture. He's writing to Gentiles like us. And so it's possible that he was just showing them like, hey, we do some things like you. It's possible that culture had just infiltrated the Jewish culture. We don't know what's going on, but we know they wait 8 days before they're going to name the kid. And so they have a party, and everyone's there, and she goes, we're going to name him John. And all of the relatives freak out because no one had been named John in their family before, right? And so they're going, oh no, this, you know, she's crazy. It's been a rough birth, you know. And this is just me, but I think there was more reaction there from her than what's in Scripture. Because if you come to like a first week mother and you're like, oh, I hate your baby's name. Like, I'm pretty sure like somewhere there in between the verses is like, and she punched 3 of them, right? Like there's just no way that like she just took that like, oh no, it's fine, go ask his dad, right? And so you know, a fight breaks out in the Duvall version, and they go over to Zechariah, who hasn't talked in 9 months, right? 9 months, he's silent, right? This sort of reminder of the silence of God that he thought he was experiencing. 9 months he can't talk, and they bring the baby and they go, hey, what's his name? And he goes, bring me a board to write on. And so it would be this sort of slate board with wax on it. And you would kind of write in the wax so you could get the message across. And he writes, his name is John. And immediately he's able to speak. And in true Luke and Disney fashion, the first thing he thinks is, I should sing a song to these people. That's what he does. The music starts to play in your minds. And we know in this moment the plot is moving forward. So let's go back to it for just a moment. I'm going to read it again and then we're going to talk about it. Here's what it says. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. Let's stop there for a moment. Notice the tense here. He doesn't say he will come. He doesn't say he's going to come. He doesn't say eventually he'll show up. He doesn't say we will be redeemed. He doesn't say it's coming at some point. It says in this moment, God has come. God is redeeming his people. God had shown up. And when God shows up, stuff happens. And when we think about redemption, I think often we think of Easter, right? We think of the cross and the resurrection, which are hugely important things. And listen, they matter. Don't hear me say that they don't. But I think if all we focus on in redemption is the cross, we miss out that redemption started when God came down to be with his people. This is the season of Advent that we're talking about right now. And it's this understanding that we are not in darkness any longer, though it feels dark, and that we are not lost, but we have been found, and we are not forgotten. God has remembered us, and that he wants to be with his people. And so Zechariah starts this song praising God, saying he has come and he is here. And at this point, Jesus is this little pound of flesh inside of Mary's womb. Not a whole lot. No miracles are happening. Nobody's walking on water, right? No one's been healed. No one has died on a cross or resurrected. But in this moment, when Jesus became flesh like us so that we could become God like him, not God big G, but God like him, right? That when this happens, redemption is happening right at that moment. And these are the little God moments that I was talking about that are happening all around us. Jesus has shown up and he's praising God for that fact. It says he has raised up this horn of salvation for us in the house of David. As he said through his holy prophets long ago, salvation from our enemies and from all of those, the hand of all of those who hate us, to show mercy to our ancestors and to remember his holy covenant. The oath he swore to our father Abraham to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve without fear in holiness and righteousness before him all of our days. Now, much of what he is singing there is taken directly out of the Old Testament. There was a famous preacher, pastor, a few years ago, who I respect and I love, and I've read his stuff and I've listened to his sermons, and I think he does a great job. But he made this statement when he was talking about becoming a Christian, and he said, one of the things we have to do as the church is to sort of unhitch ourselves from the Old Testament. And I think I know what he was trying to say. What he was trying to say is we don't have to do the sacrifices, and we don't follow the kosher law, and there's a lot of things that felt weird to this sort of Jewish audience in the early church that as they're trying to figure out what does it mean that Jesus is the Messiah. And I get what he was saying, but here's the problem with that. The New Testament never unhitches itself from the Old Testament. It shows that Jesus is the fulfillment of the promises of God. We need the Old Testament because it tells us who God says he is. And it shows us that he fulfilled. Almost every line in this song is a callback to a passage in the Old Testament where God has promised something to his people. Zechariah is saying, we are not forgotten. He has not abandoned us. He is hearing us. He sees us, and he has shown up today. He is here to redeem us now. And it doesn't always happen the way we expect. It certainly doesn't happen in the timing we expect. But God, right? God is never late. He is never early. He shows up precisely when he means to. And there have been so many times in my life where I've asked God, man, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you show up in this timing? And I don't get why you're not listening to my advice, God. I'm very good at giving advice, right? Why aren't you following my lead here? And as I've looked back, almost always, I've had these moments where I realize why he did the way he did. And what the Old Testament moving into the New Testament shows us is that God doesn't make a promise that he doesn't intend to keep. And he has never forgotten his people. He has not failed them. He does not fail. I can remember a time in my life when I was younger. I was in a rough spot. Things were going poorly all around me. And as much of my life is, it was almost entirely caused by me. It was just bad choice after bad choice. And I felt like I had screwed up my life, and I had screwed up God's plan for me, and that I was a failure, and that man, I don't know what the far-reaching implications of this are, but I'm sure it's probably a nuclear holocaust, like just everything. I was as low as I could be. And I was talking with a mentor of mine, and I'm telling him this, I'm giving him my pain, and I've messed up, and I can't see down a good path here. And I think, God has abandoned me. And he starts laughing. I was very annoyed. And he just sort of giggles at me. And I'm like, what? Maybe you don't understand what I'm saying. And so I reiterate, as most of us do, if you disagree with me, it's probably because you just didn't understand what I'm saying, right? So I said it again. No, I've done these things, and I made these choices, and I don't see a way out, and I can't find God's plan, and what am I going to do? And you know what he did? He looks at me, and he tells me almost jovially, he says, Aaron, has God ever failed? And I was like, not to my knowledge. And he looks me in the eyes and he smiles and he goes, why do you have so high of a view of yourself that you think you are going to be the first to cause it? And I said, well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. But he was right. God has not failed. And he's not planning to start. And in this song, we get the sense of hope that comes from that we serve a God that sees us, a God that loves us, a God that cares for us, a God that has made promises to us that he intends to keep, a God that told the people of Israel that he was going to bless them, that he was going to use them to bless all of the nations of the world, that he would take care of them. And in the midst of their oppression, in the midst of all of these things that are happening, they couldn't see it. And they were tired, and they were scared, and they were angry. And we have this couple who's sort of living in that they just want the blessings of God. We've done what is right. Why aren't we getting what we think we deserve? And they're hurting. And God shows up. And here's what God always shows up. And the reality of it is, God was showing up the whole time. They just couldn't see it. And the hope is that God has not forgotten us. The hope is that God is redeeming us, even in this moment. That he is present with his people. That he has not failed. And he sure is not going to start today. And tomorrow's not looking pretty good either. He's got a perfect track record. And we can find hope and trust in a God who has a perfect track record. Even when we're looking around at our world and going, what is going on? Even in the moments of our life where we're just broken, and where it feels like there's no connection and we don't know why, and we don't get it, God is there. He has not fallen asleep. He has not forgotten. He is in the business of fulfilling his promises. He is faithful. And Israel found that out. And this couple waiting on a baby found that out. And eventually the world found that out. In the middle of the darkness, the light will come. And the darkness cannot overcome it. In the midst of the craziness, in the midst of our brokenness and our hurt, in the midst of our anguish, there is hope. There are people and situations in your life that are hope stealers, but I am here to tell you this morning, God is a hope dealer. He shows up every time. And he wants to redeem his people. And see, Jesus always shows up in surround sound. Advent is this descent, right, from heaven into Mary, and this reminder that when he grows up, he will descend again on the cross into death. There's always this tension with God. And so when we prepare to celebrate communion today, if you have your cup, you can grab it. And I'm gonna give you advice, pre-open it now, because they're a little hard. And if you don't do it right, sometimes you spill it on yourself, so just go ahead, you're fine. I know some people don't like these, but can I be honest? I love hearing the sound of these opening across the sanctuary. I do, I love it. And the reason I love it is because it reminds me that every one of us is doing this together, that we are not alone, that we are together as a community with God, participating in his suffering and celebrating our redemption. And so when we're going to talk about communion today, we're going to celebrate with one another. Here's the reminder. It's the reminder that when this act happened, when this Last Supper happened, it felt very dark. They didn't know what was coming, but the cross was on the horizon, and Jesus was about to die, and the disciples were going to scatter, and one of them was going to betray him, and one of them was going to deny him, and the rest of them were going to run away, and the only thing that he's going to have left was a couple women that were still following because they were braver than the men at the time. That's it. And hope looked like it was extinguished. But in that moment, as God does, he showed up. And life was never the same. And in the midst of the darkest moment of history, deicide, the death of a God, hope shined bright. And so when we take this cup today, go ahead and take out the bread. And be reminded on that night when he was betrayed that Jesus took the bread and he broke it. And he said, "This is my body broken for you so that you may have hope." Take the bread. And in the same way, he took the cup and he blessed it. And he said, "Guys, this is my blood. It's a new sacrifice." And they didn't understand what that meant, but they knew it wasn't good. He said, "This is my blood, a new covenant, one of hope. One that's going to not just bless you, but it's going to bless the entire world." Go ahead and take the cup. And you know what they did after that? They sang. Apparently, the Bible has more commonality with Disney than we knew. They sang. They sang together. Because the plot was moving forward. Redemption was coming. Redemption had arrived. And so here in a moment, we're going to sing together in celebration. But before that, I just want to pray over the congregation. Would you pray with me? Lord, I am so thankful that you have not forgotten us. I'm so thankful that we can celebrate here this morning that redemption has come. Salvation is here. And in our loneliness, in our brokenness, in the craziness and darkness that sometimes we see around us, you've shown up. You have brought hope to us. And so we cling to that hope here this morning, knowing that you're a good God. You're a loving God. You're a God that wants to be present in the midst of your people. And we thank you for that today. In your Son's precious and holy name we pray.